Hi everyone, my name is Marcus and you're watching the Reef Nerd YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk about why we test our tanks and how exactly I go about testing my tank with these test kits here. Alright, so as you can see here, I've got all my testing stuff out and today I'm going to be running through a range of brands. I'm by no means saying these are the only brands you should use, but I've used a lot of different test kits, and for me personally, these are the ones that I've settled on as the ones that I like for each specific element. So I've got the Red Sea Nitrate Pro, I've got Aquaforest for calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium, and I've got Hana for phosphate. These are just the ones that I like. You might have other preferences. There is an element of preference when it comes to test kit based on maybe what you find easy, if it's a color changing one or the particular set of instructions, or maybe it's a value thing and you might base your choice on price. I will say though, however, the best test kit is the one that you use regularly and that you are able to use consistently. Now, before I actually get into using these test kits and testing my tank water, I want to talk a little bit first about why we test our tanks. And it might seem like a really obvious and basic question, but I think a lot of people don't fundamentally understand what we are doing when we're testing our tank's water. Within reason, you shouldn't actually care about the value that you derive from a single test on your tank water. That is to say, if you test your alkalinity and the value is 7, or you test your alkalinity and the value is 8, as long as it's in the range that we're looking for, that is the generally accepted range in which corals can grow, it shouldn't really matter. What we do care about and what we are looking for is consistency. And in order to know consistency, you need to know what your last test result was. So if you tested your tank a week ago and your alkalinity was 9, and you test your tank today and your alkalinity is 7, that is of concern. That is a big problem. You've dropped 2 DKH in a week, which is a very large swing in relative terms. However, if you didn't test your tank a week ago and you looked at your tank today and all the corals are stressed, maybe some of your SPS have died, and you were to test your water today and see that your alkalinity is 7, but you didn't know that your alkalinity 2 weeks ago was 9, you would have no indication as to what was wrong with your tank. You'd post on MAFA or another Facebook group saying, my parameters are fine, and you'd post up all your parameters and they'd all be well within range, and people would speculate wildly as to what is wrong with your tank. But because the alkalinity of 7 is perfectly fine and perfectly normal and within range, no one would say that your alkalinity is the problem, because you wouldn't have that fundamental information that a week ago your alkalinity was 9, and that massive swing is what kills coral. So you can see why when I say it doesn't matter what your current value is, what matters is whether it has changed from the last time that you tested and how quickly that change has occurred. So the reason why we test our tanks is not to understand the current value, it's to understand the rate of change of that value over time. That is what allows us to keep stability in our tanks, and if there is one fundamental truth in reefing, it is that stability is what causes corals to thrive. They are very adaptable creatures. Corals can thrive under a very vast range of parameters for all the different elements that we test in our tanks. What they can't generally survive in is when those values are constantly changing. So with that said, we're going to test my water today and see what my values are so that we can see if my tank has been stable in the last week or if there's been a trend in one direction or another for each of these elements. That's what we'll base our decisions on. That's what we'll base any diagnosis if something is going wrong in the tank, and that's how we will move forward in keeping the tank stable. So first up, the test I always start with is the Red Sea Nitrate Pro. The reason why I start with this test is that it's the longest test, so I want to get it cooking, get that timer counting. I think it's a 10-minute timer on this one, so we'll do that one first. Now, as I open this, what you'll see is that it's quite a kit that comes with a Nitrate Pro. There's all these pieces to it. It's a bit of a jigsaw to assemble it. You get this color wheel, which I find really helpful because with other nitrate, with the color on nitrate tests, I've always struggled to read it, and I find this is the most readable one that I've come across. So you clip that wheel in there like that. There's 3 reagents. There's an A, B, and a C, so I'll get all those out. And we have 2 vials. Now, with the Nitrate Pro test kit from Red Sea, you have 2 options. You can run it in the low range or the high range. The low range is built for a nitrate of between 0 and 4 ppm, and the high range is built for a nitrate of between 4 and up to 64. So if you're expecting your nitrate to be 4 or above, you do the high range test. If you're expecting it to be under 4, you do the low range test. If you're in doubt, do the high range test, because the reality is that if your nitrates are under 4 or 5, the value is not so important at that point. It's just the knowledge that your nitrates are in that range. Of course, 0 nitrate is a bad thing. So if you are consistently in the low range, you will want to do the low range test to make sure that they're not 0. But as I said, if in doubt, do the high range test. And that's what I'm going to do today, the high range test. In order to do that, we need 1 ml of aquarium water mixed with 15 ml of RODI. I have RODI here and I have aquarium water here, so let's get that going. All right, so I'm going to use this Accurate syringe for 1 ml of aquarium water. There we go. And I'm going to use this bigger one for 15 ml of RODI. Now, when using these syringes, I find the best way to get an accurate read is to suck more liquid than you need and then dial it back down slowly to the exactly on the line. There we go, exactly 15 ml. Now, with a big syringe like this, once you push the plunger all the way in, there will be a tiny bit of liquid left in. So you then suck the plunger back up a bit, give it a tap, and cause the drops of liquid that are still in there to fall into the tube, and then push it back down and you'll get that last drop out. So with this one, which is my RODI and salt water, it goes in the middle chamber here. For the other chamber, which is the one with which you'll compare the color wheel, you simply put 16 ml of tank water in there. There we go, 16 ml tank water. Now don't get these too confused if you're doing the high range test like I am. If you're doing the low range test, both of these vials will have only tank water in them. So I always put that one straight in the color wheel, and now this one that's going in the middle, which is my RODI and tank water, is what we'll be adding these reagents to. So to start with, we do 5 drops of A. This is A. Now with dropper bottles, you want to open them, give them a tap so that there's no liquid in the nozzle when you turn it upside down. Then you turn it upside down and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Easy as that. Now it says to shake for 15 seconds. All right, now we add 1 scoop of B. B is a powder. Now with any powder-based addition, you're looking for a level scoop. That's, if I can get the lid off, there we go. So with any powder-based solution, you're looking for a level scoop. So what I tend to do is dig deep in the vial and get a heaped scoop. And then as you bring it towards the top of the vial, you want to just give it a tap on the side and make sure that what you're left with is level. Now it says 60 seconds of shaking, and for this I'm going to put the lid on the vial and start a timer on my phone here. So 1 minute timer. There we go, so that's a minute. Now next is 1 scoop of C. Same thing, we want a level scoop. Now with our level scoop of C added, we just shake for another 15 seconds and then we're going to leave it for 9 minutes. So as I said, the nitrate test is the longest test kit on all of these, so that's why I do it first, so we can do some of the other tests while we're waiting in that 9 minutes. Alright, so I'm just going to put that in there, start my timer for 9 minutes. Alright. Now while that's counting down, we'll put some of this Red Sea test kit away, back in here, all the bits that we don't need anymore. It's good to put things away as you finish with them so you don't lose anything or mix up the components with another test kit. That's certainly something you wouldn't want to do. Alright, so I'm just going to put all that to the side. Okay, so while that's cooking, we're going to do the phosphate test from Hannah. Now this is the marine phosphorus ULR, measures in parts per billion. Even though we test phosphate, the phosphorus test is the one to buy if you're looking for a Hannah checker. There's a very simple conversion chart, so you just look up the value that it gives you and then it converts it to phosphate. It's a pretty simple test, although I'm going to show you a couple of tricks as we go through it. So the first thing is you get the egg, you get some vials. I only use 1 per test. Make sure they're very clean when you use them, and you get the reagent, which comes in these paper sachets. Now the trick that I was referring to is the way in which we open and pour the paper sachet of powder into the vial. I think a lot of people struggle with this. So the way I do it, and I always prepare it before I actually start the test, is you get some scissors and you get the paper vial, you give it a flick to make all the powder accumulate on one half, and then you want to cut along one edge and then the other edge like that, and then you carefully open it and you want to make a little wedge and fold it in that wedge. So you've essentially made the packet into a funnel like that. It's going to make it real easy to pour the powder in without it spilling anywhere when we get to that step. Now for the test itself, we need 1 vial, we need a lid, and we need 10 ml of tank water. So I'll take 10 ml of tank water, and you want to try and get this in a way that's not going to create bubbles all over the glass of the vial, because that is a pain, and you don't want any bubbles on the glass of the vial because it'll interfere with the test. So I just pour it in slowly on an angle like that. Now you turn on the little checker, you just press the button once, give it a few seconds, and it'll say add C1. Open the lid, put the lid on the vial. Now I clean it with my t-shirt, but any microfiber type cotton or tissue should do, but you want it to be free of fingerprints. Now put it in the vial, close the lid, press the button, put it down, and don't touch it. It won't take long, only takes a few seconds. There we go. Now it says add C2. So we take it out, unscrew the lid, take our sachet of powder reagent and carefully pour that in using the funnel that we made before. Just give it a little tap. Keep tapping until no more is coming out, like that. Put the lid back on, and now we're going to shake for 2 minutes. So I'm going to sit here and do this for 2 minutes, but thanks to the magic of editing, it's going to be pretty rapid for you. Alright, so that's 2 minutes. So you just want to clean the vial again. Make sure there's no fingerprints on it. Put it back in the Hannah checker, close the lid, and hold the button for 3 seconds until the timer starts. And now it's going to count down from 3 minutes. So both of these will be finished at around the same time. This has got about 3 minutes to go. Obviously, the Hannah checker is going to count down for 3 minutes. So while that's happening, I'm just going to get rid of this. And I'm going to talk about the Aquaforest test kits. I won't start them just yet because it might be a bit rushed to do all 3 in 3 minutes, and this is a video so we can take our time. But one thing that all the Aquaforest test kits have in common, and I'm just going to unpack this calcium one to give you an idea, and we'll do this one first when we get to it, is that you have obviously your reagents, and they're all labeled the same way in that you have an A, B, C, sometimes a D, depending on the test kit. This one actually comes with 2 vials of B because you'll use it quicker than the other ones. But they also come with a reference solution. Now this reference solution is on the label, it will say what the values are. So for this calcium one, it's got a calcium of 425. It can also be used as the reference solution for magnesium and salinity, in that it's got 33 parts per million salinity and 1310 for magnesium. The point of these reference solutions is that you can test this water using the test kit normally and see what result you get. This serves 2 purposes. It helps you calibrate the accuracy of the test, but it also helps you accurately calibrate your methodology. Some people, in the way they use the tests, it's a little bit different in that maybe they pour drops from the side, maybe they pour drops from the top. Maybe their color changing recognition is a little bit different, so what they think is blue is not quite as blue as what someone else thinks is blue when you're looking for color shifts. It doesn't really matter how you do the test as long as you do it consistently every time the same way for you, if you've got a point of reference with which to be able to calibrate. So if you do a test on this and your calcium comes out at 410 or 415 and this says 425, you know that your testing methodology and this test kit is performing about 10 parts per million less than the reference. So any test you do on your tank water, you can just add 10 parts per million calcium to it and be fairly certain of the accuracy of the test kit. And all the Aquaforest test kits come with a reference solution like that, so it's a really good feature. All right, we've got 30 seconds left on this phosphate test, so let's just kill some time for 30 seconds and we'll wait for that because I don't want to rush this test when we go for it. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the result is calculating 22. So that's 22 parts per billion phosphorus. So what does that actually mean? Well, you look up on the chart. I just Google Hannah phosphorus chart and it comes up as the first image, but it's hosted on a bunch of different websites. So it was 22 equates to 0.067 ppm phosphate. So that's 0.067, or let's round it to 0.07 parts per million is my phosphate, which I'm perfectly happy with. That's a perfectly reasonable number for phosphate. Some people try to keep it a little lower at 0.04, but to be honest, from my perspective in my tank, which is mixed reef, anything under 0.1 is a good result for me. So I'm pretty happy with that. Good stuff. Now we'll check the nitrate as well, because that's been 9 minutes now.
And you just turn this wheel whilst looking down from above and making sure you're not shadowing it, so you're getting good light on it. And to my eyes, it's about halfway between the first and second colors on the wheel. That's not including the pure white, which would be a, well, in the low range test would be a 0 reading, and in the high range test that we've done here would be a 4 parts per million reading. So we get the little chart that comes with, and it's going to be between 4 and 8 parts per million. And given that I think it's roughly halfway, maybe a little bit closer to the first circle, you know, we can reasonably say that I think my nitrate is probably 5 or 6 parts per million. It's certainly under 8 and probably above 4. And for nitrate, that's more than accurate enough, particularly when you're in this range of the 4 to 5 parts per million mark. It's a good place to be. If you're shooting for much lower nitrates, you would have done the low range test, and then you have more granularity and more accuracy. The values on the chart go from 0.25 to 0.5 to 0.75, 1, 2, and 4 parts per million. So, but in the high range test, and for my purposes again, that's perfectly accurate, and I'm pretty happy with that. So that's nitrates and phosphates done. Just to repeat, my nitrates are at about 5 or 6 parts per million, and my phosphates are at 0.07 parts per million. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's start the aquaforest calcium test. Now, all the aquaforest tests are quite similar, but it still pays to just double check the cheat sheet here. So it's 2 ml of water on this one, and that's not RODI water, let's just put that aside, it's tank water. So we'll get 2 ml, and they provide syringes at an appropriate size for the amount of liquid that you need, so very easy to measure. And just flick the syringe to get all of the water in to the nozzle. There we go. Now it's 1 scoop of A, and like all powdered scoop based dosages for test kits, it's a level scoop. So just give it a tap, make sure it's fairly level. That's pretty good. And then in this one, it's 10 drops of B. Now with 10 drops, I wouldn't recommend doing it all in one go. Do it in 2 lots of 5 and reset in between. Just, you know, 1, it helps you count better. 10's a big number. And 2, sometimes these bottles aren't the greatest, so it's just better to take it slow. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now just reset it, give it a tap, and start again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and with this we just have to mix it for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see that's bright pink. Now we get 1 ml of our third reagent, which is C, into this syringe. Okay, and take a look at the chart and figure out where you think your calcium is going to be roughly. So, you know, for me, I'm expecting it to be around the 400 parts per million mark, which on this equates to 2 ml left in the syringe. Now, obviously we want to play it safe, so I'm going to go quite quickly down to about the 4 ml left in the syringe, which would be a calcium of 300, and then we'll go slow from that point. And that's just a safe way to do it, so that you don't accidentally rush right to the point where it changes color and then have a hard time identifying where it actually changed color. So there we go, I've gone down to 3, and as we can see, it's still very pink, which means my calcium is in fact well over 300, which I would expect. But I'm going to go slower from this point. So let's do 2 drops at a time. Give it a shake. Another 2 drops. Give it a shake. We're now at 24 mil left. So, and it's still pretty pink, but it's just starting to go purple. We're looking for this to change to blue. Do another 1 drop. See, it went a little more purple, but there's still a very pink tinge to it. Do another drop. Now it's started to go blue, but in the light you can still see a pink tinge to it, so it needs another drop. Alright, I think that's gone pretty much very blue, so I'm going to take a reading at this point, and we're at 21 mil, which would put us at 395 to 400. So remember that, 395 to 400 parts per million calcium. But what I always do is, give it 10 seconds, which we've done, and then give it another drop and just see if the blue intensifies. And to my eyes, that did. It went to a richer blue, and there's definitely, whilst before it didn't appear there was a pink hue, seeing it now, there probably was a little bit of a pink hue, and that's completely gone now. So now we're at about 19 mil left in here, which would be 405 parts per million. So you can see how I'm certain that my calcium is now between 395 and 405, and I'm leaning more towards the 405 side. So I would probably record my calcium as 400 or 405 based on what I just did there. And that's how I always do it. You want to be sure that the color has fully developed, but if you add a drop and there is absolutely no change, obviously it's going to be the previous value. Now I always add the extra reagent left in the vial back into the bottle. I know there's a few schools of thought on that, and some people don't do that. Perfectly fine if you don't. For me, I do. I want to stretch these test kits as far as I can. Alright, so I'll just put that aside in the to be cleaned pile, but for now I'm going to put all of these bottles back in the box. Again, you don't want to mix these bottles up, that would be catastrophic for your testing, so make sure you put them all back in the box when you're done. And let's move on to the next one, magnesium. Now magnesium is very similar to what we just did. It's very similar to the calcium, so let's try and do this fairly quickly. We have an A, another A, oops, a B, the reference solution, a vial, a C, a D, syringes, and a scoop. Now with this one, I think it's exactly the same. Yeah, it's 2 ml tank water. And it's 5 drops of A. Oh, okay, you've got to be careful. Sometimes these bottles do that on you. So there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 drops of A. Done. Then it's 3 drops of B. 1, 2, 3. And just mix for 5 seconds. It's 1 scoop of C. As always, it's going to be a level scoop. 2, easy. And mix for 10 seconds. And in exactly the same way, we're going to be adding 1 ml of the final reagent using this syringe. Now, I'm expecting my magnesium to be somewhere between 1200 and 1300 more than likely. So I'm going to race down to probably about the 1000 mark, which is again about 3 mil left in the vial, and then go slowly from there. Yep, and that's still pink. We're looking for it to change color to blue. But with the magnesium, you probably want to go very slow, because when it changes, and every drop is, I think, about 10 to 15 parts per million. So you do want to be as accurate as possible with magnesium, because it's not the most accurate test kit ever, and that's common with all magnesium test kits, not the Aquaforest one. It's just the nature of the test. You're always going to have a 10 to 20 part per million range with a magnesium test kit, so the more accurate it can be, the better. So I'm just going one drop at a time, looking for that color change from pink to blue. There we go. You can see that just changed. It went from pink to purple in just one drop. Now, like the other test kit, you want to add another drop after that and confirm that it actually goes to full blue. So, another drop. Yeah, now it lost that purple tinge and is now a dark blue. So I'll take a reading. We are at 18 mil left in the vial, which would be 1230, so 1230 parts per million. So I'm going to do one more drop and just see if it impacts it, and if it goes a richer blue, removes any pink tinge. Yeah, it did. In fact, the blue went a little clearer after that. So I think that's where we're going to settle at, which is now 16 mil left, which would put us at 1260, so 1260 parts per million magnesium. Now that's a little bit low. It's still well within the acceptable range for magnesium, but I like to keep my magnesium closer to 1400. So I probably will up my magnesium dose a touch. The way that I do that, given I'm running a calcium reactor, is I can put either more neomag media in my calcium reactor, but I'll also probably do just a once-off dosage of magnesium chloride or magnesium sulfate, and I'll use an online calculator to probably do a dosage that would lift my magnesium by about 30 or 40 parts per million, and I just mix that up in RODI water, and I'll dose that gradually to the tank over 3 or 4 days manually, just pouring a little bit in every now and then, just to boost it and buffer it a little bit. And I know that's a temporary solution because it won't impact my consumption long term. That's not automated dosing or anything like that. So adding the extra neomag to my calcium reactor will be what increases the dosage of magnesium permanently. All right, we'll add that to the pile of to be cleaned and put away all these vials. That leaves us with our last test kit, which is probably actually the quickest test kit of all, but probably also the most important test kit of all, and that is our alkalinity. Now, alkalinity is very simple. I'm sure you've all done an alkalinity test before, but the way it works with the Aquaforest test kit is very similar to every other test kit for alkalinity that I've ever used. Has a reference solution, very useful like the others for calculating, plus the dye and the main reagent. Now for this one, it's 3 mil of tank water. So it's a little different to the calcium and the magnesium, which were 2 mil. The alkalinity one is 3. So make sure you get that right. 3 mil. And we do 3 drops of A. So now this is a very bright liquid. 1, 2, 3. Just like that, very easy. 5-second mix. Should be like a turquoise greeny kind of color. Now I'm expecting this to be around 7.5 to 8 DKH, ideally 7.8. So I've taken my 1 mil, and 7.8 would put us at 44 mil left in this, so let's race down to about 60 mil left in this. There we go, and we can see it's still a turquoisey green, and we're looking for this color shift to go to full red, pink, magenta kind of color. So we're at 6, let's go a little slower now. 2 drops at a time. And you've got to stir it constantly, because you'll note you add the drops and it changes color, and then you mix it and it changes back. It's still blue, but it's not as turquoise. Let's go to 1 drop. Starting to get a pink hue. Definitely got a pink hue to it, but it's not fully developed yet. You're looking for that rich red color. So that's probably pretty close. Let's take a reading. We're at 45, 44. Let's just do 1 more drop and see if it gets richer from this point. Yeah, it did. It went quite red after that drop. So that's at 46, no, 44. Do 1 more drop, see if it changes. I don't think that did. That didn't change at all. So that reading of 44 would be 7.8 DKH. Bang on where we want it to be. Excellent. Put the remaining reagent back in there, and we're done. So have 3 vials to clean out. Make sure you wash them thoroughly and put them back on in each box. And make sure you screw the lids back on your reagents and put them all away so you don't get them mixed up. And that's testing. I do this battery of tests. I try to do it once a week. Sometimes it turns into once every 10 days or so, once a fortnight at a minimum. But the real benefit from this type of testing is that you need to see a progression over time. As I was saying before, a single test in isolation is only good in comparison to your last set point. There are plenty of tanks that run at 6 DKH and plenty of tanks that run at 10 DKH, and the corals are perfectly fine and thriving in those conditions. But if one of those tanks was to quickly revert from 6 to 10 in 2 weeks, probably a lot of corals would suffer, maybe even die as a result of that. So it's not about what the value is, it's about the change in value and how rapidly it occurs. And in order to know how rapidly it's occurring, you need to test more frequently, particularly when a tank is young. For young tanks, I would be testing alkalinity every 3 to 4 days, and calcium, magnesium at least once a week, nitrate and phosphate at least once a week as well. We've all seen those posts on Facebook groups where someone puts up something saying, my parameters are fine, and then posts all their parameters and they are fine. And then they proceed to say, but all my corals are dying and I don't know why. That's not really that helpful, because we can't, unless it's something super obvious like pests, like flatworm or something that can be easily identified from a photo, then it's more than likely that your fine parameters aren't actually fine, because the norm for your tank has been very different over time and there's been a rapid change in those parameters, even if they're still within the range of what's generally considered fine. It's the lack of stability and rapid changes to values that cause corals to suffer and sometimes die for many tanks. And as you can see, a single test result is never going to identify that. So let me know what test kits you like. As I said, These are the ones I use. I've tried a heap on the market, and these are the ones that I find the easiest and the most accurate, but it is a very personal thing, so I encourage you to try a few brands and find which ones work for you. Keep a routine when it comes to testing your water, and if you find it really laborious, there's plenty of technology out there as well. I'm running the Core 7th KH Lab, which I've done heaps of videos on in the past, that does automatic alkalinity testing for me every 6 hours. And there are other devices on the market like the Reef bot and the Neptune Trident and the KH Guardian, which all do automated testing as well. But however you test your tanks, make sure you do it in one way or another, and strive for that stability that corals thrive on. If you found this video helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. Most of my viewers, according to the YouTube analytics, aren't actually subscribed, and it really helps the channel if I get more subscribers. It's going to help me grow and do better content. Additionally, if you've got friends that you think could benefit from my content or any of my videos, please share it with them. And if you've got questions or comments, ideas for future videos, post them down below. I'm always in the comments section, so it's great to have a dialogue with you guys. But that's all for today. Hope you found this video helpful. My name is Marcus, and you've been watching the Reef Nerd YouTube channel. Bye for now.